Welcome to the MyKitaab podcast, a podcast on book publishing in India. 3 times a week, your host, Amar Vyas, will interview authors, translators, editors, and publishers to learn how to get your books published in India.
Today's guest is a chartered accountant, an entrepreneur, author, and an alumnus of I Am Ahmedabad. Anurag Singhal has worked with Hindustan Unilever, Aditya Birla Group, Tata Steel, and Deloitte in the past, and he was winner of the CA Young Achiever Award in 2013, awarded by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. After his MBA, Anurag became the co-founder of CA Job Portal, India's first recruitment website exclusively for chartered accountants. He's also a volunteer with Art of Living and also runs 2 websites.
MyCastory.com, my MBA.
Yeah, thank you. So I will re-record the intro separately. So Anurag also runs 2 websites, mycastory.com and mymbastory.com. In addition to that, he has authored 2 books, first being Auditing Mantras for Chartered Accountancy, and most recently his second book, Accounting for People Who Think They Hate Accounting, was published. And we'll talk about both of them in a moment. But without further ado, Anurag, welcome to the MyKitaab podcast.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. How can I contribute to this amazing initiative of yours?
So, Anurag, is there anything about you that I have not covered in your very brief bio that you would like to talk about?
No, pretty much you've covered, I think, almost everything. And I think writing is something that really gives me a kick. Having said that, I have now acknowledged the fact that writing is not something that you do for money. So if you publish online, all the high castles in the air that you can build about Google AdSense generating revenues don't happen. When you sell books, physical copy or e-Kindle, unless you're a runaway kind of a book, money doesn't come. So you have to reconcile yourself to the fact that yes, I love writing. I love being read. That's it. And I'll do something probably else for my bread and butter. But writing is something that gives me that special satisfaction. So that's been the key reason why I've gone for so many things that I have done so far.
A numbers man who thinks that writing does not pay. Or writing does not pay enough to make a living and earn your bread, huh?
Yeah, I think that's been the experience. 7.5% of MRP, and books will not print in volumes unless you are a Chetan Bhagat. So yeah, so there's one segment, just like any outlier in the world, who will mint thousands of books, and therefore royalties will run into lakhs. But yeah, the lesser mortals like us will publish 1,000 copies, 1,500 copies and manage to get it sold, and that will be big enough. So probably, yeah, so that's the initial phase. But yeah, having said that, we are now looking at a 30 years journey where probably with each new book, things will get better and better. So for example, having launched Auditing Mantras for 200 rupees, now I have launched Accounting for People Who Think They Hate Accounting for $60. That's in INR terms of 4,000 rupees. And the irony of the situation is that I had struggled from pillar to post to get this accounting book published in India for 99 bucks. People didn't accept it. And then someone in US found it fascinating and published it for 4,000 rupees, where the royalty will be 400 rupees, 4 times that of the MRP that I would have settled myself happily for.
Oh, those who are listening would absolutely come to know that we are talking to an absolute numbers man here, guy who loves his words as much as he likes his figures, because an author jumping straight into pricing and royalty even before we get warmed up. I think this is one of the first discussions on the MyKitaab podcast where we are really moved into third gear of our conversation. So, Anurag, but before that, let's take a pause and probably take a step backwards. Let's move on to the first segment, which is about you. This is the part where we would like to get to know you, the person. So you obviously have a very admirable academic record, a lot of wow factors. I thought first I would begin by complimenting you on that.
Thank you so much.
Ever considered getting into teaching line or academics, or you always wanted to get into the business side of things?
So, academics is something which I've always loved. So, I've been the poster boy for my teachers, I think, right from class KG, that's 1991. So, those teachers still adore me and I adore them. But yeah, academics as a profession, I have wanted to dabble into it. But yeah, somehow the entry barriers in India is that if you want to get into a B school, you need to have a PhD, and a PhD requires a 5-year rigorous effort. having said that, I'm a Marwadi and Marwadis are very, very strict on NPV IRR. So even the 1 year decision with respect to PGPX was something where my stakeholders, was at loggerhead with my stakeholders, quitting a job, paying 22 lakh rupees upfront, taking my wife and 1 year old daughter to college. Yeah, academics is something, I think it's a very noble profession, and full-time academics is something probably I might look at later. But yeah, I have dabbled with professional coaching for chartered accountant students. So that was the genesis of my auditing book, where I had to de facto prepare one material for them for the tuition classes. And then once the classes got over and I got a phenomenal response for that material, I said, okay, why not publish it as a book and let readers across the country benefit from it. So that's how things happen randomly in our life. Like we two meeting each other is also a very random part of our journey.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your three ventures, right? So people typically step out and start one venture out of business school. Obviously, one was not enough for you. In addition to CA Job Portal, you also had My MBA Story and My CA Story. So can you talk a little bit about each one of them before we get down to your writing?
Yeah. Okay. So my this venture called CAJobPortal.com actually had a lot of emotional connect. So I used to be invited on Sundays by the CA Institute to mentor fresh chartered accountants, so who had just graduated and were into the job market. And I realized that the top tier chartered accountants, the ones who were glib in terms of talking and had a big four background, that's EY, Deloitte and stuff, easily got jobs, but people at the bottom of the pyramid really struggled for jobs. Why? Because a lot of people in this segment are not very suave in terms of their comm skills, and they do not have a background. A lot of middle class and lower middle class students come up. So then we started it just as a one-stop platform where we disseminated information with respect to CA jobs. And then it got a very good response from people, because this was one place where there was uncluttered information, jobs which were premium, and I did not charge anything from the users. So there was no revenue model actually for the first 1.5 years. We just wanted to get people jobs. And then through my MBA, I realized that I had one case study on CSR, where we realized that CSR cannot be sustainable in the long run. So unless it has to be backed by a revenue model. So then we got into that revenue mode, got big shots onto our advisory board, the co-founder of Naukri.com, IIM Ahmedabad Dean Alumni, Mr. Arvind Sai, ex-group CFO of RPG. And then now Sonia has also joined. It gives a lot of satisfaction. Like for calendar year 2015, we got people jobs in India, Dubai, Indonesia, Africa with aggregate CTC of around 5 crores. And that's across companies like Unilever, P&G, ITC, Amazon. So it's a good feeling. Coming to MyMBAstory.com and MyCAstory.com, MyMBAstory.com has its genesis in the fact that I think a lot of people in India want to do an MBA, and they are kind of misguided by those headlines on the Economic Times and the Telegraphs of the world, which only talk about that 1 crore plus package of that one guy who goes into an investment bank in New York and gets that plum job. So I wanted people to get into the thick of things. And there is a lot of pagal guy and this kind of thing. But pagal guy again is a lot of clutter. So people pose questions and 24 people will give their gyan, which is seriously they themselves do not know what they are writing. So this is a collection, MyMBAstory.com is a collection of authentic one-pagers from people who've been there, seen it and done it. And now they have a message to give to MBA aspirants. And MyCAstory.com is also on similar lines, where I'm taking accomplished chartered accountants on board and asking them to, please mentor these future aspiring chartered accountants. MyMBAstory.com and MyCAstory.com still today are non-revenue in model. I really want to mentor those students.
My story is also there, I guess, from about a year ago, which incidentally also took about 6 months from a previous discussion to the actual story getting published. Anyway, I think it was a very interesting experience. I'm not sure if you recall, Anurag, but Business Week, at least in 2005, 2006, thereabouts, could be sooner, they used to have a segment called A Day in the Life of an MBA. Okay. So either it used to be stories by B school students or alumni who have probably completed their business school education about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. And there was a very good mix of people from different business schools in the US and it was largely North America focused, different business schools in the US and Canada. And then what are the different professions or careers that they have taken? And then the key takeaway was that what are the specific skill sets that the business school has enabled them to be successful in their current role, right? So to me, when I was applying to business school, I found that extremely useful. It actually gave me a very good perspective. I went ahead and reached out to 3 or 4 of the people who had written. I'm still connected with them on LinkedIn, and we still exchange notes every now and then, almost 10 years later. That has been the impact of that particular publication. And what I could see in case of your initiative in this case, and of course not being a chartered accountant, I can't speak for my CA story. But in case of my MBA story, I could see a similar thing, that look at the long-term impact. Right? Somebody who's looking to apply for a business school goes ahead and reads the profile of real people. So people who have actually gone through the struggle, somebody who maybe wanted to change careers, could not, what was their experience, somebody who actually went ahead and pursued the job of their dreams, what was their experience. So I think that's a very good platform in itself. Have you had any conversions so far, in the sense that those who went ahead and shared their stories have gone ahead to publish their books?
So you are the one who was one of the front runners who gave me support on that website. Yeah, and now you're publishing MyKitaab. Yeah, and I have interviewed Anurag, who happens to be an IMA PGP alum and who's now MD of General Mills India. And he writes himself as CEO by day and author by night. So I think he's one guy who you must interview. I'll connect you to him.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So he's a CEO by day and an author by night. And his books are really very good.
Okay, that's very interesting. So let's come back to your writing, Anurag. Let's talk about your first book, and it was called Auditing Mantras. So take us back to day one of your decision to write a book. How did you go about it, and what were you thinking when you decided, okay, this is the topic that I want to pick up?
Yeah, so I think the genesis of that was the fact that I had been forced to prepare notes for auditing students. So I was given an opportunity at a coaching center in Calcutta to conduct a full session for auditing for CA IPCC. And in course of that, I actually prepared notes in a very different fashion. So what I did was I actually decluttered the entire content which was there in traditional books and wrote actually tweets. So in an entire 250 page book, not even one sentence ran into 2 sentences. So it was like 1 sentences, and this generation which was used to a Twitter and a Facebook status did not really believe in reading paragraphs. So the entire book was either diagrammatic or was in the form of tweets and status updates kind of a content. And my students loved it. So students were around probably a dozen or odd. And then I said, okay, the course has come to an end. I am still with Aditya Birla Group and doing my bread and butter. Why not let me become immortal by writing something which would probably benefit the masses? So I went to a publisher. He said, okay, you're not famous. I said, fine. I went to someone else. He was actually keen to publish it, and yeah, it went live. And I now receive feedback from people across the country that yeah, they've gone through Auditing Mantras. They've liked it. Even though the book might not be a phenomenal hit because I'm not into coaching, but yeah, it gives a very different feeling when someone far off in Tuticorin writes you on mail that I really want a book of Auditing Mantras, puts 325 rupees into your bank account, and you courier the stuff to him. You feel, wow, okay, I've impacted lives.
So wait a minute, you get paid upfront even before you ship the book to your reader?
Yeah, so that was for the hard copy. So that was published, and because those remote locations were not covered by Book Corporation distributors, so I took the extra effort to I made a cash loss on those books actually, because courier used to cost 120 rupees. But I still said, okay, I want to impact people, and that's more important than earning money. So that was how it was done. Yeah. So in major metro cities, the book was available off shelves of major bookstores, and it's still available today. So with the Companies Act coming in, drastically changing, so we had to revise that entire book, and now it's again relaunched by the same publisher, Big Book Corporation. So I really wanted to prepare a smart learning solution for the Gen Y student who will not want to read paragraphs but would want to read sentences. So the ones who have read it, they're happy.
Then also you talked a little bit about the how, that is how you went about writing and then how you went about publishing. So walk us through your publishing experience a little bit for the benefit of, let us say, a professional who is planning to write a book related to area of their profession. Okay, so let's say I'm a civil engineer. I would like to write a book about civil engineering, right? So it's a means of giving back to my peer group, to giving back to my community. but it is obviously, it's a very niche segment to begin with. It is obviously meant for a very targeted audience. So with such a niche background, how do you actually go ahead marketing a book?
Okay, yeah, so that has its own challenges as well as benefits. So I'll first talk about the benefits. So when you cater to a particular segment, so it's always that you will always respect a neurologist more than a general physician, because the neurologist knows his subject much better and that's more specialized. So that's auditing also for us. So that was one specific segment of the entire basket of course content which a student had to undergo. So there are specific websites like caclubindia.com and casansar.com, and by that time CA Job Portal had also picked up. So that was the place where we had a lot of footfall in terms of chartered accountants coming up there. So I used to share extracts of the book there as free samples, and if you would like them, they were being redirected to our main parent website auditingmantras.com, and then people could then again have a look at a 120 pager sample out of a 300 pager book. So I gave around 40% of the book as a sample. And some of them who still liked it would place orders online. And for the benefit of a lot of readers who wanted to get the ebook at a lower cost, I also launched an Amazon Kindle book as well. So the fastest way to actually publish today is to go for an Amazon Kindle book. Have an MS Word doc, have a beautifully designed cover, and just go live. And then you can just share it on social media on the various groups which your particular profession will have. So when you talked about a civil engineer, I think there will be some Civil Engineer Society of India which will have a Facebook group with some 20-30,000 people. And then if you can just keep on sharing some extracts of your book, and you have to, I think the audience today is far more open to new content, but yeah, they need to understand why you are different. So I think our target base in our case also wanted to understand, okay, there's a Surbhi Bansal in the market, there's a Pankaj Garg in the market, then who is this Anurag Singhal and why is it different? And what was your value proposition? And I told them it's a smart learning solution. So you don't read paragraphs, you read only sentences. That helped. So I have used social media to my uttermost advantage actually. So we have not really gone. So we also went for those traditional methods like having a guide, distribute pamphlets. Yeah, but I think social media marketing really helped the most. You created a Facebook page, a Facebook group, and made people like it. That's how it helped.
Do you think that not having a certain year of experience under your belt, or a PhD or a professor title in front of your name was a disadvantage to you in terms of marketing, in terms of acceptance from the peer community, or in terms of credibility?
Yeah, I'll be honest, yes, it was a big dissuading factor for people who said, okay, this guy is not into coaching. He works with Aditya Birla Group and out of passion has written a student book for CA students. Is the content good enough? Is it in tune with the syllabus and all? 2 years down the line, so initially there's this big resistance that, okay, Anurag Singhal is still in his 20s. So I was around 28 or 29 when I published. He is not a famous name in the market. And with this book, this is not a 5.7 that I'm just going to read in the course of a train journey. It is a book that I'm going to use to prepare for my exams. And what if this book is not good enough? I'm going to flunk my exam. So it's different. So it's like a medicine for a fever, and vis-a-vis taking some cold drink off the shelf and just having it. So my book was more of medicine, and when it comes to medicine, you cannot. So it comes to fever, it's like crocin. So auditing meant Surbhi Bansal, auditing meant Pankaj Garg, and you really didn't want to experiment. 2 years down the line, I have reconciled myself to that fact. Okay, so I am not a crocin. So let me at least have the crocin guy write something to bring acceptability. Yeah, so those are the realities that you actually figure out when you actually get into the thick of things.
In addition to a foreword by a renowned professional in your sector, right? And I'm trying to generalize it now across the board, going back to the civil engineering example, that in addition to a foreword, let's say by a professor at an IIT or another renowned engineering college, do you think it will help in terms of credibility, in terms of acceptability, if I go ahead and include reviews by students who have actually purchased the book, they have benefited from the book?
Yeah, we tried that also actually in the initial segment where I said, okay, there are these 3 students who wrote, I wish I had gone through this book earlier. But I think the audience tends to feel that, okay, students are writing a book, review, students are gullible, and probably even a 200 rupees of some incentive might, just make them write a review. But if it's a professor who's written it,
Sure.
it is credibility. So those initial things I have written, but it is actually a smart learning solution, and I wish I would not have gone through my audit tuitions because this book makes it redundant. But yeah, it didn't work. So now we are having those reviews by known guys, the Crosins of the world. So,
Sure. How about using a platform like LinkedIn, which is obviously for professional networking? Do you think it might be helpful if the author goes ahead and reaches out to some of the influencers within your profession, or maybe executives in large corporates, sends them advance review copies and requests them for either a feedback or a testimonial, which they can then go ahead and use at the cover of the book or the back cover of the book, let us say, to again try to beef up that credibility, because obviously at age 28 in a profession where decades really add to the wow factor or the acceptability of the author, there could be certain disadvantages which could be overcome by bridging it by other means, right?
Yeah, that is actually a very good idea. So we tried that and we actually used that successfully for CA Job Portal also. So when we got the co-founder of Naukri.com on our advisory board, it helped. So for books also, I think, but then this particular author who is going to try them will have to get reconciled to the fact that 99% of people are going to reject that one plea to even spend half an hour to 1 hour reviewing the book, because people simply will not do that. I face that a lot with myMBAstory.com. You just need to spend 25 minutes or 20 minutes to write those 5 answers, but people say, why? What's in the deal for me? Now you really cannot tell them that, okay, there's nothing in the deal for them, because it simply does not excite 99% professionals. Having said that, that 1% people in the world, they are still interested in helping others. So yeah, you'll have to face 99 rejections before you get that one guy, but he's good enough. So
Okay. So on a lighter note, Anurag, do you think, be it for my CA story or for my MBA story, do you think if we convert the text to audio and start recording podcasts of these professionals, would they be more willing to share their stories at that time?
yeah, I think so. A lot of senior people whom I wanted to interview, the feelers which I got was, okay, you just gave me a written questionnaire and you expected me to write down the answers. If you would have called me up and asked those questions, I would have got the feel of an interview and I would have actually gone ahead and answered them. Yeah, so I think audio podcast really will help getting a lot of more people into adopting that concept.
Yeah. So you talked about the pricing, Anurag. So you said that your first book was priced at Auditing Mantras was priced at 99 rupees, which is less than a dollar and a half at the current exchange rate. So keeping the student population in mind, and then the cost of printing, publishing, distribution, obviously it was not a money-making mechanism for you. But even at that price point, and it was a print book at 99 rupees, right?
No, the print book was around some 200 something.
Print was at 200. Okay. So roughly $3, let us say. So at a $3 price point for print and dollar and a half or 99 rupees price point for an ebook, what was the response from the student community?
Again, I learned a lot from the market. People said because Auditing Mantras was an academic book, they wanted a hard copy, which they could underline and color and use a lot of fluorescent pens, because they wanted to tell their parents also that, look, I am studying. So ebook has not really gained acceptability for academic books as of now. Yeah, but Auditing Mantra surprisingly was bought by a lot of people in Japan and Germany and US who are far more attuned to the idea of reading online just for the heck of it. So what I have now decided is that while I'll do another version of Auditing Mantras and leave aside the CA part into it, so specific to the syllabus and specific to India, and make it a general book which people will now use as a Pepsi or a Coke rather than just a Crosin. Yeah, so that, because I find that people abroad are far more open to the idea of reading a Kindle book than in India. In India, people are still wanting to read that hard copy, no matter what.
Fantastic. So I think that was a good feedback in terms of price point as well. And in terms of the format, I think the format is more important than the price point when you're looking at the student population. And by student population, can you help me define the age demographic? Would that be 25 and under typically?
Students, they would be 20 to 25.
20 to 25. Okay. So if one is planning to write a book, even now in the Indian academic space, let us say, print book, particularly a hardcover, would be a better option compared to an ebook.
Yeah. Certainly. Ebooks don't work for academic. For when people want to prepare for exams, they don't want the ebook, because they can't mark it and they can't make coloring and all. That helps because they want to revise it again and again. So probably with an ebook, you can send an editable Adobe PDF and all, but yeah, that infrastructure is not there probably. Yeah, but then this will vary differently for an MBA student. So for example, accounting for people who think they hate accounting is more targeted towards MBA students. There I find a lot more traction in terms of that ebook also. That can also because the audience has more access to a laptop and a Wi-Fi than a typical chartered accountant student. So I think for authors, you will need to understand exactly that what is the segment that you are targeting and what exactly works in the minds of that segment.
Let's talk about accounting for people who think that they hate accounting. First of all, a very interesting title. Was that by choice or was that by accident?
So it was my choice. So when I went to PGPX, became a kind of a demigod because I knew accounting well. So there was these engineers who had managed 250 people in their IT teams, and they got their first shock of their life when they got their first C plus in FRA, that is the financial reporting and analysis. And yeah, then I used to conduct classes and they used to come to my dorm and say, okay, please teach me a bit about cash flow. I realized that, okay, boss, this is one segment. I still remember, this accounts and finance becomes quite a thing. So there was this one case study that I had taught on the eve of the exam, the end term exam, and that same case study had come in the exam. I think those 12 or 15 people who had attended my classes remained my friends for the rest of the entire course till the convocation. So the realization which I had was, okay, boss, accounting for someone, because accounting was something that runs into our veins. So from class 3, I think my grandfather used to make us do some auditing and accounting. So that was as early as when people in our family. So I actually dedicated this book also to my grandfather, my Nanaji. But then people don't understand. So people after 10 years into something else, especially when they come to an MBA, the 1 year format, accounting becomes quite a nightmare for them. Not that they hate accounting, but they start hating accounting after that first C plus grade or a D grade or a B, because grades for especially the first semester do matter a lot to people. So anything that makes grades a problem becomes a problem for them.
Here's a little anecdote from days at Ahmedabad. So the very course that Anurag is talking about, financial reporting and analysis, the very first ever test that I took, I think it was 100 out of 100 or something like that. That's what I got. The second quiz, the one disappeared, and that was my score in the second quiz. Okay, and and here's the worst part: spouses talk when you're on campus living with your family, and even more disturbing for the student is that their children talk. So just the way you have like, my daddy is stronger than your daddy, the kids start comparing. My daddy got 80 in that particular course, or he got an A plus in that particular course, and the other kid is really upset because their daddy only got a C or a B or something like that, right? And it all comes back to the home. And it is a very difficult time in the first particular semester. I can completely agree to that, Anurag, and thank you for sharing this. And let me also tell you, when I was on campus, we had 4 chartered accountants, and at least for the first 2 terms, they were the most popular people in the class.
Yeah, sure. So my wife also, so a lot of course, term 1 and term 2 was accounts and finance, and I used to roam around Tinseltown. And so other spouses used to say my husband stays in the Cindy room for till 4 o'clock in the morning studying. And she used to say, oh, I am found scouting for corners because my husband just does not study. So that's a big problem, I think, yeah, for non-finance people. So that was the genesis of this book. And I really wanted, so again, I wanted to be different. So today, all the accounting books that you have are loaded with 60-65 sums. And someone who does not have a background, suddenly to expect him to, go through these sums and understand the intricacies. So what I've done is, I've just taken one sum and explained that as if a professor is teaching that sum or problem in the classroom. So, okay, don't worry, let's tackle it one by one. So coming to this is how we approach. Now we move to the next thing. So that's how I've done it. And so one thing that I've learned in course of my MBA, and which I would want to share with prospective authors also, is that you will have to make a compelling value proposition for whatever book that you want to bring. People really want to understand how you are different, because no matter what you write, you will always have a precedent, you will always have one bestseller in that particular segment, and people will want to question that. That okay, if I am wanting to adopt this. So early adopters is actually the most toughest part of the everything. So here you have to make a compelling value prop for yourself.
Okay, and in terms of, it was released only about a month ago, right? So we are in January 2016. Your book was released about a month ago. So it's probably too early to talk about sales, but let's talk about the initial response, the very early adopters that you talked about, particularly considering that it's at a very different price point.
Yeah, so here it's going to be more B2B. This book is going to be targeted more at the libraries of universities in US and UK, because I think normal readers will find $60 as a very stiff pricing point. But that's the marketing philosophy of that particular publisher who has adopted this book, that they really don't want to publish something for the masses per se. They want a B2B kind of a thing. So it's going to get into 2000 digital libraries of universities across the world, and yeah, that's their philosophy. Let's see, I'm still learning.
Okay, so you are here in India. How did you approach your publisher who are based outside the country? So first of all, who are these publishers, if you could disclose, and how did you approach them? What was your whole process like?
So it's Business Expert Press in the US, and how I approach them is, again, I think I have lost count of the number of publishers that I have approached for this particular book. And one fine day, these people replied. So I was just arbitrarily, going to every publisher website, finding one particular email, and just sending across my 5 liner proposal that, yeah, this is what I have, this is what is my credential, are you interested? So these guys replied, and they were very positive. I was also surprised because, after having you faced so much of rejection, then suddenly someone evinces interest, you feel, okay, I mean, are they bluffing me? What exactly are they trying to do? But yeah, ठीक है, God was kind, so it happened.
So do you think not having an agent hurt you in the process in terms of getting the responses, or do you think that you would still have gone ahead cold calling literally instead of going through an agent?
No, agents will not help. I am not sure whether there are agents also for this or not. But yeah, you need to just keep approaching people and you find someone or the other. So, for example, I remember from Auditing Mantras in IIM Ahmedabad, there was one particular bookstall fest where a lot of publishers had set up stalls. So I went and talked to each one of them, and they made, some of them were outright no's and some were interested, and they connected me to some other people. So I think book publishing is something where you have to lose all ego, keep it at the side, and approach people that, okay, boss, I might be this and this and this, but here I'm an author who wants to be published, and these are the only people who can help me. And keep trying, and probably someone will smile.
Okay, so like we learned in schools, right? Try and try till you succeed. So I know we are a little bit short on time now, so I'll quickly move on to our final segment, Anurag, which is 5 for 5, where I ask you 5 questions and you have a minute to answer each of them. And at any point in time, if you are either stumped by the question or you think that the question does not deserve an answer, you can take a pass and we will not hold it against you. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, question number 1. Which is the one book that you would like to recommend to our listeners and why? And it may or may not be written by you.
I think you must read The Alchemist, because if you have not read it so far, because that one book teaches you a lot about life's philosophy, that you will find random people across the journey who will take you to your ultimate destiny. So in case you've not read The Alchemist, you have really missed something. And yes, also The Fountainhead. So these are 2 books that have been drivers of my life's philosophy, and I think you could probably have a look.
Second question. Anurag Singhal seems to be a very popular name on LinkedIn. There I could find at least 20 of them at the last count. So have you by any chance encountered any of the other 19 Anurag Singhals in your life so far?
No, not really. So
okay, I'd asked this question to a past guest, Vivek Mehra. That's episode 2 on the MyKitaab podcast. Is the name Anurag Singhal cut out for a chartered accountant's role?
No, I think there's a lot of symmetry in the name. 6 in the first name, 6 letters in the name, and 6 in the surname. So numerologically, the name is very lucky. And probably whatever you touch will turn into gold.
There we go. Anurag's hinting very soon. All his ventures are going to turn into gold if they're not already. All right, let's move on to the third question. Listeners for the MyKitaab podcast are authors who have written a book and they're looking to get it published. So any advice that you may have other than the loads of advice that you've given already, any specific advice that you would like to offer to them?
I think rather than shoot emails, which may not work, try to call up the board lines of publishers and talk to people. When you talk to people, your emails might get into spam boxes, your email might get ignored, but when you talk to people, people remember. And they may not be in a position to help you immediately, but yeah, they do keep that in mind. So do talk to people. Don't just send emails, because that is one tendency that, okay, I go and just shoot mails, which has worked also for me. But now that I try to, for example, just another corollary, that I have tried to get CA Job Portal published in various newspapers as a startup. It has worked only in places where I've been able to talk to reporters. So mails sent out has not worked, because there is a lot of competition in terms of mails, but there is less competition when it comes to trying and cajole that receptionist to transfer the call to that sales guy and talk. So probably when you talk, it helps. And yeah, you should always have a short pitch, very short and sweet pitch, that why is your book compelling, as I've all told that before also, because generally internationally people ask you to prepare one book proposal where they actually want you to deliberate on and explain that why is this book different, why is going to appeal to audience, who are the competition, what is the competition here. So you need to be very well prepared with all those 5-6 standard answers.
Okay, so since you brought that topic up, Anurag, let's put you in a spot a little bit. What is the pitch for either Auditing Mantras or for accounting for people who think that they hate accounting?
Yeah, so the pitch is, it's different. So Auditing Mantras is written in sentences, not in paragraphs. So it is going to appeal to an audience who's into the Twitter and Facebook world. Accounting for people who think they hate accounting is written by an accountant who has spent 10 years in corporate life, has taught his MBA students, has taught his MBA batchmates as students. So he really knows that pain. So, and I think, yeah, so for me, those experiences actually are a selling point. And it's different. It's not that I'm loading people with a lot of numericals and solutions. It's just one sum of a cash flow and one profit and loss account. Have that and experience.
Fantastic, Anurag. So you're the first guest on the MyKitaab podcast to whom I put them in a spot and asked them to prepare or go ahead and make a pitch. And you not only pitched one book, but both of them very successfully. So kudos to you for that. Let's move on to a final question. That is my favorite question. Which is the one question that you wish I should have asked you?
I think you should have also asked me about that initial journey where I would have built castles in the air, that okay, I'm also going to be a next Chetan Bhagat. And when that didn't happen, how did I cope with that disappointment? So, yeah, and I think that is going to happen to everyone. That
Would you like to answer that?
I think as my fundamental philosophy for any new venture is that you should have your basic venture in place or come to a point where cash flow does not matter. So these writing for most people is going to be only Maslow's hierarchy, that self-actualization and social esteem point of thing. Your basic physical needs better be met by some other traditional source or your bank interest, bank FD's interest, because generally to get published and make millions looks good on television and films. But yeah, probably my experience has been tough actually. I think a lot more marketing has to go into that, and I do not know, because none of those books have become like household names, which has been a dream. Because I'll be very honest, when I had read 5.7, I actually wanted to be the next Chetan Bhagat on town. And when I landed in IIM Ahmedabad, I thought, yeah, ab to banna hi hai yaar, ab to Chetan Bhagat ho hi jayega. Does not happen. And you have to also learn to write crap. Somehow I've not really learned that. So probably crap means, the thing is that I have written very segmented books as of now. For the vast majority, if you want something to be adopted on the railway station bookstalls, you have to write something which is more, crap in terms of, okay, it is not high intellectual content. It is something which the masses can adopt. You'll have to figure out that also, which I am trying to figure out. A book for the masses. So the scalability will be there, because these both are very segmented books. I want to be published on a book which is found on every railway station book counter in India.
Okay, on that note, let's find out how can people reach out to you if they have any questions or they would like to get in touch with you, Anurag.
Yeah, so you can probably send me a mail on x14anurag at imahmedabad, imasd.earnland.in, or you can just Google search Anurag Singhal. You'll find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, and all is available. So
fantastic. We would have the links to ways to reach you on this in the show notes for the podcast. So Anurag, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for listening. If you like this show, please leave a review. You can also subscribe to the newsletter by visiting www.mykitab.in. That's MyKitaab.in.